It is my pleasure. So, Bertha Vazquez has an undergraduate degree in biology and a master's degree in science education and has taught science in middle school for 34 years. She's now the director of the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, or TIES, which has the goal of empowering teachers to be leaders in the educational community. Since its inception, TIES has presented over 400 professional development workshops in all 50 states and provides middle and elementary school teachers with the tools they need to effectively teach evolution and to counter evolution's critics. In 2020, Bertha was appointed a fellow of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and in 2023, she received the Friend of Darwin Award from the National Center for Science Education. She will be a speaker at the Scopes Tricentennial Conference this July in Tennessee, which will commemorate the 100th anniversary of the historic Scopes monkey trial. This was a landmark case in 25 that pitted biblical literalism against evolutionary science and argued whether American schools would be places of science education or religious indoctrination. But you don't have to travel to Chattanooga and wait for July to hear from Bertha, because tonight on this RfRx Talks, Bertha will share her journey of deconversion from Catholicism into a successful promoter of the power of science, reason, and critical thinking in shaping a more meaningful, dare I say better, worldview. Welcome, Bertha.
Hello, and thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. And I'm super impressed with your programming.
Oh, thank you.
This is
I'm
really awesome.
so
So
glad
thank you,
that you
everybody.
accepted our invitation.
I feel like I'm back in the classroom during the pandemic, you know?
It's going to be just like that since you taught middle school. I think you're prepared
No.
for us this evening.
No,
You
no,
know,
no.
it's funny because I've done so many presentations, and I've spoken in front of like thousands of people. And I don't get that nervous, but today I'm very nervous because this is a topic I have never talked about publicly.
Ooh.
Well, let's go. Let's get started. I have never talked about the way I walked away from religion, and it's I'm nervous. I'm a little emotional. What can I tell you? Um, Let me
I think you're
start.
going to do great. And we're
Cara,
here to
we should
support
pass
you.
notes behind Bertha's back to make her feel at home.
Oh yeah, no, just yell out in front of everybody. Believe me, I've seen middle school for 35 years. I know. So
Right at the
if
most interesting part, I'll raise my hand and be like, I need to go to the bathroom.
I always would say wait 5 minutes because that way I know they really got to go to the bathroom, as opposed to they just want to call somebody in the hallway with the decoy phone that they have hidden in the pocket of their hoodies. But anyway, because they have two phones, right? They give you one phone, and then they have the other one in the decoy in the hoodie jacket
Oh my,
pocket.
I cannot picture a world,
Wow.
because of course I went to school before there were phones and that you could carry around. I just can't picture this, that all the
Oh
kids in
my
school
Lord,
have
it
phones. Oh my
changed
God.
education. It
Oh my God.
changed education. The cell phone, that's a whole other hour of conversation. I want to share with you a little bit about my background. That's why you have these two lovely pictures here. If you can see the screen, I know some of you are just listening, but on the left is my dad's family. My dad's parents were from Spain, and they immigrated to Cuba when his young oldest sister was, well, actually, my grandmother was pregnant on the voyage to Cuba. And that's my brother. My dad is kneeling in front of his sisters and parents. On the right side, that's my mom's family. My mom is seated behind her mom, and my grandfather and my uncle. Now, I lived with my grandmother and my grandfather and my mother, my dad, my brother. So these are the people, they were very, very important in raising me. And I have a picture coming up of my grandfather, which is very important to me, which I'll show you soon. Hang on for that. This is my parents' wedding photo. So they came from Cuba in 1961. No one I knew growing up. I think one friend was actually what we'd call Anglo-American. I grew up in a completely Cuban community. Miami's very different now. We have great Hispanic diversity in Miami now. It's fantastic, but at the time it was just all Cubans. I actually learned Spanish before speaking English. And I had to put this picture here of my parents because how more Cuban can you get than holding a Bacardi rum bottle in your hand, right? So my parents are in the middle there, and I happened to be at my mom's house doing this presentation because I had to be with her today, and I'm actually a little nervous that she's may hear this, like my talk about leaving religion. So it's kind of a strange place to do this. Oh my God, that is me. That is me with the buck teeth. And that is, my Holy Communion. I was baptized in the faith. I went to Catholic school for 13 years. I love like rituals and artifacts. So I dug up for you all some stuff in my closet. That was my rosary. That little book is the book you see in my hand. That's the book. I still have it. And some of the other stuff from my communion. This is one of my favorite books. It belonged to my great aunt. It's like a missalette for church. And every time somebody was baptized or died or got Holy Communion, you'd get, I don't even know what you call them in English, these things called estampitas, like little announcements, I guess. And I loved this book, and I still have this book. And some of these announcements, estampitas, are like 100 years old. This one is hand painted. How beautiful is that? This one is one of the things about the Catholic Church that it fascinates me, that tiny little piece of cloth. They touch the saint after his death. This is San Juan Bosco. They touch his body with the cloth and then cut the little pieces up and put them in the little stamps. That right there. Yep. And then this is actual flowers from Bethlehem. And so I have these things at home, and I don't know. I love this stuff. And sure enough, in the book, guess what I found? I found my baptism announcement, and I found my Holy Communion announcement. You cannot get more 1970s than that Holy Communion announcement there. I was like really, really, really into this. And I remember seeing West Side Story, and there's a scene where Maria runs to pray. She has a little altar in her room because she thinks that Tony may be dead. And I asked my mom if I could have an altar in my room. Here are some lovely photos of my 8th grade confirmation with my 8th grade teachers and some of my friends. I loved that dress in the left. It was just one of my favorite dresses. And we also had a ton of fun we had, I remember some of the older scary nuns. I do. And I was very scared of some of them, but we also had some very cool progressive nuns. And I know this is not everyone's experience, but as far as the people were concerned, I had a very good experience. I had excellent teachers. I had kind human beings. I even played tennis every Saturday for 2 years of high school with the Father Dennehy, who was the principal of the Catholic school I went to. So, it wasn't about the people around me. The people around me were good people. It was the other stuff. So I found little bedtime stories of the saints in my treasure chest of goodies. And I also found a book that I made. I don't even know what grade, but man, I typed this whole thing. But as I read through it the other day to prepare for this little book is all about sin and what separates us from God. And, you're going to go to hell. And it was this envy, gluttony, anger, sloth, temptations, the devil. And I
Wow.
do
And so one of
remember,
your things said any willful thought. Wow.
yeah, so any actual sin, so even, they're thought police. It's not that you want, let's say you go steal something, that's bad, but even thinking about stealing your buddy's bike is bad. I mean, and it continues after your death, as Christopher Hitchens said. So I think that's what started me thinking, like, God, why do we have to always be talking about sin? I'm 7 years old, what is hell and stuff like that. But I mean, look, I put a lot of work into this little book back when there were typewriters. So what happened? What happened to this little girl that loved the people around her, who was into the rituals of her faith? Well, it started in 3rd grade when my friends and I each had a favorite animal. My favorite animal was the cat, but Isa's favorite animal was the dog, and Maria loved horses, and et cetera, et cetera. And we got to the story of Noah's Ark. And I looked around the room thinking, oh my God, God just killed all the cats and the dogs and the horses. And it's essentially, it was biocide, right? I didn't know the term at the time. I was in third grade, but everybody died, including the mothers and the unborn children. And I thought that there's something just not right about this. You're telling me God is good, and then at the same time, you're telling me he just wiped out the planet. And it really disturbed me as a little girl. I mean, have you read the Bible? If you get to the Old Testament in particular and places like Leviticus, it's well, I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations about that.
So
The second thing that
having gone to Catholic school, Bertha, we didn't really get into the Old Testament a lot. I don't know if your particular parish was different. Like, I don't remember them reading stories in the Old Testament. I guess I knew of Noah's Ark, but I think in my head it was just a fable at the time. I don't remember us being pushed that this was true, nor the Adam and Eve story, by the way.
right.
What's your experience with that?
Well, in ninth grade, I had a great teacher. He was fantastic. His name was Father Jim McCraner. Lots of Irish priests in my high school. St. Brendan, there's another Irish name. And he said, you understand this is epic history. Epic history means we exaggerate or we tell tales to help people understand something. So, for example, he said to us, Moses didn't really part the sea. It was probably the tide that went back out. And then, since the Egyptians were on chariots, they got stuck, and then the tide came back in and drowned them. So he was just saying that it was an exaggeration of the truth. But I had one of my road to Damascus moments that day, Rob, because if he told me that Adam and Eve is just a myth, because, Catholics don't really go into that whole literalism thing, then why did Jesus come? Because he came to absolve us of original sin, the sin of Adam and Eve. But if Adam and Eve didn't really exist, that's just a story to help us understand God and real life, then why did Jesus come?
How old were you when you had this revelation?
Ninth grade, Father Jim.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And did they tell you to stop asking so many questions?
Well, it happened to be a day where we had he was a Protestant. I'm not sure which denomination of Protestant. He came to the class to talk to us about their faith. And he said that they took the Bible literally. And then Father Jim was explaining how we don't really take the Bible literally. And I asked that question. And then I asked, well, if you take the Bible literally, why don't you drink? Because he said they don't drink. And I was like, I mean, Jesus' first miracle was to turn water into wine. And that's when Father Jim asked me to go make copies in the office.
Huh.
No joke.
Yep,
Hey,
that
but
tracks.
nice guy, I mean, but so here's the second thing. God the Father, God the Son, He capital letters, Him capital letters, every image. As a woman, as a young woman, a girl in this case, I was like, what about me? Where am I in all of this? It just seemed so male dominated. And, you have your 12 apostles, for example. And I thought, well, I have two role models. I have a virgin mother and I have a prostitute. I can't be a virgin mother, and I don't really want to be a prostitute. I found myself constricted. Like, where do I fit in all of this? And I don't know how you guys feel about that. If any of you had those feelings, like, gosh, this is a really male-dominated faith.
I had that experience for sure. And in our faith, I was one of the Protestants that would have said that, oh, what we believed in our church was that the Catholics weren't real Christians because they didn't believe this was real and actual history, and so they were very literal about everything, and that included the expectations for the gender roles that people were to perform. And when it said women be silent in the church, they meant shut up. And that really didn't sit well with me either.
Yeah. Oh,
It's very limiting if you're not a man.
Yeah, I mean, just, Catholics are supposed to be open-minded nowadays, whatever, but just the other day with my husband's best friend, my husband, who was raised completely secular, asked Albert, his friend, well, can a woman ever be Pope? And this is a very progressive, cool guy. And he's like, oh, no, 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 never, no, but no, why? Why? What's the difference? Why can't I be Pope? I mean, not me personally. I know why I can't be Pope, but it's still pretty, I mean, darn misogynistic.
Oh
But
yes, it absolutely is, and I don't think very many people are buying the excuse. I don't know if you got this kind of response back, which was, "Oh no, no, it's not misogyny. We're cherishing and protecting women by
oh yeah,
making sure that they're safe at home and they're not in leadership positions and they're not out doing dangerous things. They're safe. We're cherishing them."
is that
That
what you
that
got?
never hit right with me.
Oh, see, I didn't get that message. I did not get that message, but I did get the loud and clear, like this is, clearly a male-dominated thing. And at one point, I think Freedom from Religion Foundation was mentioned. This was 25 years ago, saying that we should write to our archdiocese and ask to be excommunicated from the Catholic faith so that they don't count us among their followers, because it sounds like they're so big, but many of the people that were baptized, who have been baptized, are not really Catholic anymore, just by name. So I did that. I wrote a very respectful letter asking the Archbishop of Miami to excommunicate me. And the letter he responded with was, I don't you know that God is your father and the church is your mother? And I was like, right there, see, why does a woman have to take the inferior role? And I go, you lost me on the first line, guy. You lost me on the first line. So he never excommunicated me, even though I requested it.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah, I
you
don't know what everybody else's experiences with that. I don't know if you get like an official letter of excommunication. Maybe back in the Middle Ages, used to drop all those candles. It was really dramatic. Have you ever seen that? They used to do it.
No.
No,
Oh
I
my God,
didn't.
they were like a meter and a half high, 3 inches in diameter. All the priests would line up with these candles and then bang them on the floor at the same time and drop them. And that was like your
Wow.
excommunication.
That's very dramatic. I did
Yeah.
always wonder about that though. I mean, the record keeping must be so intense because what if you get excommunicated? Like, I guess I grew up in the evangelical kind of outgrowth of the Southern Baptist Church, which doesn't have this kind of like church hierarchy. So like do there must be records somewhere. If you get excommunicated, do they, basically, put your picture on the wall of all of the other Catholic churches in the area? Be like, watch out for this one. They're not welcome here.
And,
I
I
and
don't
don't
do they
even
have
know.
know.
do they
I
have
do
an
not
age
know how
roll
that works.
off? Do they have an
What's
age
that?
roll off? Like people don't live forever. When do they, figure? Do they wait till 100? Do they wait to 85? The average. Well, what do they do? When do they take you off the rolls just because of age?
I suppose when you pass away and,
But
well, if you're excommunicated, you're going to hell.
how would they know? All right, so I just stopped going to church, and as
Right.
did people
No,
in my
they
family.
still totally count you then.
Yeah, but like at some point, I am going to die. It's like, so they know that, right? Even if I'm on their rolls incorrectly, they know life expectancy is not 120. So they must, or do they just keep everyone on forever? Once a Catholic, always a Catholic on their books. How does that work?
I think they're probably estimating when they say, what is it, like 1.5 billion? I may be wrong about that. They're probably taking into account the number of baptisms versus the number of deaths. I don't think they're being dishonest about that, but we're all being counted there, right? Even though those of us that are not really religious anymore.
Interesting. So that method of accounting would basically count everyone who had at one point in time been a member of the church and hasn't been subtracted out yet due to, counting up the number of deaths, but it would not at all account for people who have left the
Walked
faith.
away. And that's why they were saying, go ask to be excommunicated so they can't count you in their number. And I did, but it didn't work out anyway. I still kept the letter though. So the next thing that happened when I got to high school, I had a great teacher in 10th grade. And in that class, we talked about religions of the world. So I learned about all the different faiths. I love that class, super interesting. And I will never forget when we got to the Hare Krishnas, I said, but Mr. Crow, it's the same God, right? Like they just follow different, rituals, or they may have different prayers, but it's all the same God. And Mr. Crow kind of looked at me and goes, no, it's different. They have different gods. And that's I said, wait a second. One of us is wrong, right? We can't all be right. So some of us are wrong. And the nail in the coffin was I was in church, and one of my friends that I'd been friends with since kindergarten, whom I've been friends with since kindergarten, there's a time during the Mass that the priest will give you some community news. And in his community news, he said, mentioned a little boy in our parish that had been hit by a car on his bike, but with the love of God and all of our prayers, he was recovering. And the next person he spoke of was my friend's father, who died of a heart attack at the kitchen table in front of his family. And I thought, well, why? I don't get it. God is kind of random with his kindness, and he saved the little boy, but he lets a man die in front of his family. And that was it. I walked out of that church a non-believer. That was pretty much it. So these were all small steps. It really made me think. But that day in church, I went, wait a second. That's not right. That was why I called it my reverse road to Damascus moment. It just didn't make sense, the arbitrary nature of goodness and who survives and who doesn't survive, and when does God help and when does God doesn't help, and everything else. And that was it for me. But a parallel story, while all of that was happening, I was questioning and doubting, and the deeper I looked into my faith, the more questions and doubts, the less things made sense. While that journey was taking place, another journey was taking place alongside it, and that was me falling in love with nature and science. One of my earliest memories, my parents had a party. I must have been 4 years old. And like I said, everybody was Cuban, right? But there was this one guy, and he was an American guy, and he started talking to me, and he did the most wondrous thing. I will never forget it. He took me over to the encyclopedias. Yes, for the young people here with us today, we had these books, and it was basically our Google, and they were alphabetized. And he took out the C, and he looked at caterpillar. And to this day, by the way, I have so many field guides. I love field guides. And he took out the C, and he showed me all the caterpillars. And then he took out the bee book, and he showed me all the butterflies. And then he showed me which caterpillar became which butterfly. I don't know why. This isn't a big deal, right? I'm looking at it now, I'm like, okay, yeah, so what? For my 4-year-old head, my brain just blew up across, it blew my mind that this was the deal. And that started making me look at other things. For example, I started taking buds apart, flower buds in my backyard, and I noticed that it didn't matter what kind of flower, they all had the same anatomy. They had the petals, and of course now I know the names, right? The style and the pistil and the stamen and the anther and the filament. But at the time, I'm like, wow, it doesn't matter. They all have the same structure. And I started finding bird feathers. And I found blue jays are very, very common here in South Florida. And I started finding these beautiful bird feathers, and I started collecting bird feathers. And to this day, I count birds for the Audubon every year. And I'm a big bird watcher, and I just absolutely loved it. Also, for one of my birthdays or Christmas or something, I got that little microscope, that typical little microscope at the Toys R Us, and I looked at everything from my cat's fur to stems to grass. And I was blown away by the beauty of what I was looking at under the microscope. And I would look up and I'd say, wow, this is amazing. When you look up at the stars and the sky, and powerful storms excited me. And trees, I thought, my God, they're eating air. Trees eat air. They're made of air, if you think about it, And I was like, this is wondrous. And I started feeling what I noticed some people felt at church. Some of those nuns that I deeply loved would kneel in church and fold their hands, and you could see that they were in this state of awe and love and joy that I was feeling when I thought, holy crap, trees are made of air. You know what I mean? It just made me really happy. And the other thing that made me really happy was something like as simple as moonlight reflected on water. It's beautiful, but when you understand reflection and refraction and the speed of light and the fact that it's an electromagnetic spectrum and this is coming from the sun, and to me it enhanced the beauty of what I was seeing, which brings us to this very famous discussion when John Keats said that he thought that Newton was unweaving the rainbow. By trying to figure out the rainbow, Isaac Newton was lessening its beauty. And then Richard Feynman came around in 1981 and said, no, it's the opposite. It doesn't subtract from the beauty of a flower to know a little bit about it. It adds to the beauty of the flower. Well, here I am absolutely in the Feynman camp. I love that I understand things around me. And not just beautiful things like flowers and butterflies and the moonlight on the water. I'm a big, big tennis player and I'm a big tennis fan. I know that is not me. I'm not that good. But the fact that physics helped me be a better tennis player. So I found that science started just diluting itself into all aspects of my life. If I understood spin and slice and topspin and this type of thing, I could be a better tennis player too. And I realized that there's really two big things, right? It's humility and curiosity. And I found that science was both. Scientists change their minds in lieu of evidence. They're not dogmatic, or at least they shouldn't be. I know there's always examples of scientists that are, but I mean, for the most part, when you see new evidence, you change your mind. You don't try to prove yourself right, you try to prove yourself wrong. And there's a tremendous amount of curiosity in every scientist. They want to learn, and they're filled with the awe of everything around them. And that led me, boom, to my career. I studied biology in school and I taught a year in France and then absolutely fell in love with teaching and came back and taught for 34 years at the same middle school. And it is the highest rated public school in Florida. And these kids, I'm in touch with them, a lot of them. Just last week, I spoke with a kid who has to choose, poor girl, she has to choose between Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. Those are her four choices. It's just she chose Harvard, she told me. But this school is a high power school with wonderful parents, wonderful kids, wonderful teachers. It's Carver Middle School in Miami-Dade County. And I had the honor of teaching the honors classes. So I had the advanced students and it was hands-on all the time. We had a lot of fun. It was hard to retire. It was really a part of my identity. And of course, it was middle school. So you're also going to get that silly, quirky, awkward kid. I admit I went to high school for 9 weeks in 2001 and came back. It was like, somebody's got to love the middle schoolers, right? And I loved that I was transmitting this passion for science to students. And so many have come back to me, hundreds have come back to me and told me that they've never forgotten how I taught science, and many of them have gone into the sciences. And I was also blessed to work with really cool, fun, goofy teachers that had the same kind of philosophy of teaching that I had. So we had a very strong department. And that led me to working for the Center for Inquiry. They needed an education director. And we started with the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, as Rob said in the introduction. And my job now is to help teachers teach. And we've added 2 programs. I'm going to tell you briefly about them and then kind of focus on Generation Skeptics, which is the one I really want to talk about a little more today. So the big picture is TIES is all about evolution education. Science Saves is about promoting science appreciation. I cannot think of something I would rather do than direct the Science Saves program. And Generation Skeptics is talking about critical thinking and helping us identify misinformation and helping teachers teach kids that, because, oh my God, that's a big problem right now, as you all know. I set some stipulations up when I got this job, and I said, I'd like everything to be free. So we are completely donor based. Everything on the websites, you could download the assessments, the rubrics, the exams, everything is free for teachers. And I made sure that any of the lab activities are easily done with a trip to the grocery store, less than $10 or free. So ties is really out there. I mean, ties has been in all 50 US states. I don't do this, of course. I trained the trainer. I was in the classroom till 2023. So I train the trainer and they present for us. I've done, a good share of the presentations, but many of them are done by other people. The next one is going to be in Texas. It's going to be a skull investigation lab comparing the human skull to other hominid and primate skulls, for example. So that's ties. So, I encourage all of you, we stop in the summertime, but we do webinars with different authors, science authors, as you can see some of them there. And we have a book out that is great for teachers. Teachers love our stuff, I think, because it's all hands-on, it's all easily accessible, and it comes with everything included. So we have a lot of different workshops. We coordinate, we partner a lot with zoos, for example, as you can see in the top left picture there, the kookaburra, the laughing kookaburra. And we get the teachers involved. One of our presentations in Kansas actually took place in a church. I had to include this here for you all. I dug this picture up for you. That's Kathleen Warnock, and she presented at a church for evolution education.
Not
Yay,
a
Kathleen.
Catholic church, because I don't see Jesus on the cross. So.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And how about that? Me sitting in church at the age of 8, 9, 10, seeing that poor guy.
You saved all of those trinkets from your. The only thing I found in a box for mine is the Jesus on the cross that was over my bed for like 14 years. that horrible
I don't know
thing.
if I'm allowed to
I
say this
saved.
on a webinar, but he was
Yes.
kind of handsome on that.
We've talked about this before,
Okay.
Bertha. You are not the first person to bring that up on this show. We've talked about CrossFit Jesus a few times.
CrossFit Jesus. Oh my God. That's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
I mean,
he
he's
got a
not wearing
workout.
much. It's
Okay,
You
suggestive.
got to
that's
work
why
out carrying the cross, if nothing else, right before they put him on it. So.
Right.
This is
I
why
mean,
this group is so important, because you think you're alone and sinning in your head, sitting in church looking up at this statue. And I'm so glad I'm not alone. Thank you, Recovering from Religion Foundation.
you are not alone. You are not the only person who has thought that Jesus was kind of sexy.
CrossFit Jesus. I can't believe it. I will never forget that. Let's go back to the boring stuff, because that was way more fun. Anyway, so you had pictures of teachers doing our lessons, and now you have pictures of kids doing the lessons. So what I think, when you train teachers, it's going to translate into engaging classroom activities. During the pandemic, for example, when classes shut down, I immediately put together a 2-week evolution unit, all online, all what we call asynchronous, which means you don't need the teacher. It's a word I never want to hear again for the rest of my life, asynchronous learning. Within 3 weeks, it had been downloaded 2,000 times, because I knew evolution was the next thing coming. Right in March, a lot of school districts, that's when they do evolution. So I got that out there, and boy, did it ever, people started asking me for a high school evolution unit that kids could do at home. They started asking me for a Spanish one. So I did high school, I did Spanish, middle school, everything for the teachers. And that's really, it's teachers helping teachers. That is our motto. Now, Science Saves, as I said, is all about promoting science appreciation. It's been also very popular. As you can see, this is going up to December of last year, 63 workshops in 30 US states. So I'm catching up to ties. We have National Science Appreciation Day, which is March 26th. That's the day that Jonas Salk announced his successful polio vaccine trials in 1953. We have a $15,000 cash high school scholarship, which is going to be announced next Tuesday. The 2025 winners will be announced next Tuesday. I have lined up to show you last year's winner. Students give us a 30-second video on how science has improved their lives or the lives of someone they know, and they can win up to everybody. It's cash awards, but first place is $10,000. We have a People's Choice Award, which will start next week. You get to pick your favorite out of 6, and the winner of that one makes $1,000. And of course, we have the teacher resource page. But let me show you the winner from last year. I believe she is, oh, sorry. This is the states. I jumped ahead, my bad. These are the states in green that have proclaimed March 26th as National Science Appreciation Day. And I said I would be getting back to my grandfather. I will do that now. The polio vaccine decreased global polio cases by 99%. Because of that polio vaccine, 20 million people who would have been paralyzed are walking today. And it's estimated that the polio vaccine saved 1.5 million lives. And that is why we chose that day to celebrate National Science Appreciation Day. And I think it's very appropriate that I am the director of this program, because if you remember the guy in the first slide, there he is. That was my grandfather on the left, opening the very first box of polio vaccine, arriving in Havana, Cuba in 1955.
Wow.
So I'm really, really proud of that. And I'm really, really proud to continue his legacy of science saving people, you know?
I think too many people have
Public.
forgotten about this.
Oh, absolutely forgotten.
Yeah, I would like now we have somebody at the head of American health system who is anti-vax, believes vaccines cause autism, is appointing all people who are even worse than that to the subdivisions of the agency. It's astounding.
It's astounding because, well, measles, for example, it's the most contagious disease we have, and so easily preventable.
Yeah, we had Andrea Love on here, and she was like,
Oh, I am a
uh,
fan.
the horror stories about like measles wipes out your immunity to other things you've had. That's like,
Yes.
oh, awful.
Yeah. If you
And the
weren't
hate
scared
she
about
gets online.
measles, yeah. Yeah, that's online. And if you weren't scared about measles before, you will be after that, and you'll want to make sure that you're vaccinated.
I tell you what, I went back and got vaccinated for measles a couple weeks ago, because I'm in a cohort of people that got it when the vaccine wasn't as effective as the later vaccines. And
That's right. We learned about that, that if your like birth year is within a certain range, you might actually not still be covered.
exactly. And you know what? I don't think I would die of the measles, but I go to the grocery store and there's children and older people there, or immunocompromised people there. And that's what we've forgotten as a society, is that you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for everybody around you. And if it just means driving by CVS and getting a shot in the arm, really, it's how many people have I spoken to that say, "Oh, I don't need it. I'm not going to need the vaccine. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get sick." I was like, it's not about you.
Right. Like, how about people who are going to get sick? Do we care about them at all? Like, come
I
on,
do. I
folks.
certainly don't want that on my conscience. You know,
Exactly. As somebody with a terrible immune system, I appreciate hearing other people say that. I'm like, please don't come to the office with some illness and say, oh, it's fine, just suck it up. I feel okay. Yeah, you feel okay, but I'm not going to feel okay after you give that to me. Please
yeah,
don't.
absolutely. So these are some of the scholarship winners that I mentioned. 30 seconds, how has science improved my life or the life of someone I know? Because I think gratitude is a very, very powerful, positive emotion for us to have. Grateful people tend to be happier people. And so we wanted these kids to stop and think about what science has done for them. Let me show you last year's $10,000.
The typical male aortic valve is 31 millimeters. My grandfather's was 9. On August 30th, 2022, my 85-year-old grandfather had a transcatheter aortic valve replacement to correct his severe bicuspid aortic valve that developed severe stenosis. This technology was pioneered in 2002 by Dr. A. Krebier. The FDA approved it for low-risk patients in 2019. A bicuspid aortic valve is a hereditary condition. Science saved my grandfather's life. It may be needed to save mine too. Science saves.
Isn't that nice?
Oh.
So that was last year's winner, and a lot of people kind of copied her pattern this year. So we have quite a few like that this year. It was very, very hard. I judged 450 videos last week.
Wow.
So
But they're all
30
wonderful.
seconds, 30 seconds for $10,000.
Yeah, 30 seconds, and the donor gives it to him cash, like a check. He says he doesn't care if he use it to buy gas to get home for Thanksgiving. So check them out. Keep your eye on that. We usually on hashtag Science Saves in our Twitter feed and our Instagram, etc. We release one a day. We have enough to do the whole year. So it's a nice way to start your day with young people showing you how science saves. Now, when I was given this position, or actually before I was given the position of Director of Science Saves, Education Director, I had this image of this story in my head. And I said, please, can I write up a script, hire an artist, and produce this 3-minute video that I really want to show you. I got the idea when I lived in France, and I walked through cemeteries, and I realized that they had these large children's sections, like a Babyland, And, the cemeteries in Miami don't have Babylands, or not the newer ones. Anyway, I'm like, well, what happened? Why is Babyland gone? And I started looking into it. I was about 22 years old when I went to France for the year. So have a look at this video that I wrote. One of my son's high school friends and one of my former students is the narrator, and we hired an artist from Pennsylvania to do the artwork.
Have you ever walked through the children's section of a centuries-old cemetery? There are so many children's graves. Children died of smallpox, cholera, famine, bacterial infections, and unclean water supply. It's heartbreaking to think of all the families who suffered these terrible losses. But if you pay attention, you start to see a pattern in the tiny tombstones. As the years pass, there are fewer tiny tombstones, fewer dead babies, toddlers, and little children, less heartache and loss, more human potential. Why? Here's a graph of the percentage of children who made it to their 5th birthday from the year 1800 to 2020. In 1800, close to half of all children in the United States died before their 5th birthday. But life-saving scientific breakthroughs soon started to make a difference. For example, in 1850, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis discovered the importance of washing hands to remove infectious particles. From 1851 to 1855, over 99% of the infants in his care survived, a figure hundreds of times higher than the norm at the time. In 1867, Joseph Lister introduced antiseptics, also saving thousands of lives. These methods, along with better sanitation in cities, saved thousands of children from cholera and other deadly waterborne diseases. In 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin to fight off bacterial infections like pneumonia and meningitis. To date, this breakthrough has saved over 200 million lives. In 1955, Jonas Salk gave us the polio vaccine, preventing an estimated 1.5 million childhood deaths worldwide. In 1963, Norman Borlaug used science to improve important crop yields like wheat. He is credited with saving upwards of 1 billion lives worldwide. Technology, safer products, modern medicine, humans have used science to improve the lives of all of us. Today, millions more children celebrate their 5th birthdays. Scientists, and engineers have made this reality possible. And it's not just children. Adults can expect longer, less difficult lives thanks to science. Science saves. It's literally written in stone.
How about that? You guys like it?
I love
I'm
that.
not crying, you're crying, to quote somebody from the chat.
You know,
I'm, I'm gonna
I
tell
tried
on
to,
myself it. Oh,
one
I was just gonna say, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Nope, you're good. Keep going.
No, I try to defend Andrea Love online sometimes because she gets some nasty, nasty comments.
I
And
have
I
seen
asked,
it. It's awful.
I said once, I go, well, how do you explain the increase in child survival over the past 220 years? And the guy wrote back, they wash their hands, antiseptics. And that's such a black and white answer. Of course, washing your hands and antiseptics have made a big difference, but so have, they're not mutually exclusive, so have vaccines and open heart surgery and antibiotics and a million other things too. And we have science to thank for that.
I've actually heard people pushing back on this on some of the atheist call-in shows where theists call and say, no, people used to live for 600-700 years. Things are worse now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Moses, Noah and company.
That's incredible. The bubble that you have to live in to convince yourself of that, and then, turn around and deny science, and then watch when you ask people, how do you know people lived that long? They're going to try and come up with some sciencey sounding answer that is not scientific at all. It's pseudoscientific, but something about, well, the barometric pressure was different, and this
Yeah,
and that and
And
everything.
in the old days, our DNA was more pure, and therefore we didn't have all these problems. That's the answer they give.
I had never heard that one before.
Oh, yeah.
And that is why we need, that's a perfect segue. That is why we need this third program, which is called Generation Skeptics. Generation Skeptics is about teaching kids, giving kids the tools to think critically, to ask questions, and to analyze their own thinking. Again, all the educational resources are free and they come with everything teachers need. And we are presenting it all over the country. Let me show you. So this is again up to December of last year. We're getting there. We're not like TIES, but TIES has been going on since 2015. We have been presenting all over the country as well. And we also presenting summer camps. We're presenting and in classrooms. For example, on May 30th, I'll be in classrooms here in Miami presenting, making kids think. Even something like Scooby-Doo. If you think back on Scooby-Doo, they really made you think. It wasn't a ghost. It was always some guy trying to profit off of the property, pretending to have a ghost so people would run away. It's a good way to teach younger kids about critical thinking.
And they got me every time with that too. I was sure every week, oh, it's really a ghost, and it wasn't.
And that's the thing. We still get caught up in misinformation. It wasn't just you and Scooby-Doo. It's every day. I mean, I have an example of what happened to me just today. Another great lab activity I have is skeptical birding. If you're into birding, you know that when you report a bird that you've seen in your backyard to something called eBird, somebody is going to ask you questions. If I say I saw a penguin in Miami, someone on eBird, in Miami it happens to be a woman named Miriam Aveo, is going to start emailing you, do you have photos? Did somebody else see the bird? Where did you see the bird? What time of day did you see the bird? Asking questions. So I call this lesson skeptical birding. You don't have to hit the hot topic issues, the controversial issues like climate change or evolution, although they are not controversial, I know, but you can teach kids skepticism with something like birding, something like Scooby-Doo, and that's the idea. So that's me teaching skeptical birding at the Biscayne Nature Center. And this group is a group of young Earth creationists, a group of young Earth creationists that the gentlemen, the older guys in the photo invited me to speak with them and debate with them. And boy, did these kids want to debate with the evolutionist. They were lovely. We had a great time. I might have planted a few seeds, which is good. So the question is, what is critical thinking? When I say Generation Skeptics wants to teach critical thinking, We use that word a lot, right? Well, does it mean what we think it means? So I asked some teachers, I said, what is critical thinking? And this is what I got. I got a lot of evaluate factual information by using evidence, drawing conclusions, verifying sources. That's exactly what I would have said when I was in the classroom. I would have said that because of this thing that every teacher has to learn. The first teaching class you take in college, you're going to learn about Bloom's taxonomy, and you're going to learn how there's different levels of understanding. And you want kids to move up this pyramid or these levels of understanding. You start with definitions and memorization, but you end up with investigating and arguing and defending and judging and supporting and critiquing. So that's why teachers have this idea of what is critical thinking. This would be, for me, it's one of my favorite investigations that TIES does. This is an example, a perfect example of what critical thinking is for teachers. You take these 7 species, you analyze things like, and we can do this online with 3D models at the Smithsonian site, or we could do this with actual skulls, but you look at things like the forehead, the facial slope, what the dental arcade looks like. You compare, as you can see, the students in this, they're comparing the skulls, or comparing the 7 species, and they're measuring and discussing and arguing and looking at the Smithsonian site. Those are the species there. And the big picture is that they understand that it's not that evolution is a ladder of progress from the chimp to the human. It's more like a family tree. Would that be considered critical thinking? I mean, if you answer in the chat, I think so. I think that's critical thinking. And teachers definitely think it's critical thinking, because these are the answers I got when I said, what is critical thinking? Analyzing data, 28 people said. Problem solving using data, 20 mentions. Evaluating evidence, source credibility, 20 mentions. But you know what I didn't get, or hardly got, was identifying your own biases, identifying the flaws in your own thinking. I got two times. And I think that is something that we should incorporate in the classroom. Because 32% of global web traffic in 2023 was fraudulent traffic through bad bot actors. And how are we going to teach children? How are we going to teach ourselves to tell the difference? Part of that puzzle is identifying our own personal biases. So I went ahead and asked teachers, like, what is skepticism? Because a lot of people think that's a bad thing. Like, you don't believe anything. Well, 85% of teachers thought that skepticism was positive. That's good. A lot of teachers said, yes, I do teach about science denial and pseudoscience. I wish I had more time. But close to 80% of teachers at least try to mention it. Do you teach about misinformation and social media? 85% of teachers said yes. That's pretty good. So what are we missing? What are we all missing? When you look at something called epistemic vigilance, it has 3 components. I think teachers are really, really good at the first 2. Evaluating the source, who's saying this, why are they saying this, and evaluating the claim itself. The earth is flat. Okay, let's evaluate that claim. Let's look at evidence pro and against. But what we are not really good at is evaluating the receiver. How we take in information. And remember, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So evolution did this to us. Okay, here's my buddy Nathan Lentz. He would be
coming to RfRx next week.
Okay, I love this guy. He's a friend and a wonderful speaker. You're going to absolutely love him. And this is one of his books. And he talks about the mistakes in human evolution, the crazy back that we have, why so many of us have, back issues. Childbirth for humans ain't a picnic, that's for sure, because of the way our pelvises are and how large the human head is at birth. So that's a problem. The knees are a problem. So many of us have knee problems, and so many of us have slipped discs and spinal cord problems. We have blind spots in our eye, and we all could use some orthodontic work in our teeth. Oh my goodness, this hole in our sinus on our cheeks, the sinus in the skull on the cheek, inside the cheek, the drainage hole is on the top. That's why we get these congested colds and headaches, and no other animal does because their drainage holes are at the bottom. Ask Nathan if you don't believe me. This is coming straight out of his book. Okay? Well, what about our brains then? If our backs may have issues and our eyes may have issues, our brains also are the product of evolution. And we are the products. We fall victim to things like cognitive bias, false memories, and tribal thinking, which Melanie Tresick King, I know you had her on, is so good at explaining. It's a lot easier to go with a simple wrong answer than a complex right answer. Like, well, they just washed their hands and got antiseptics, as opposed to washed their hands and got antiseptics and a whole bunch of other stuff like vaccines and antibiotics. We try to teach kids that the more emotional they feel about a topic, the more careful that they need to be. If you really feel strongly about GMOs or homeopathy or the vaccine, one way or the other, check yourself. Check yourself before you make a decision. This is what I was telling you guys before the show started. I read last week that Peyton Manning was comforting a young child. Here, there was a picture accompanying it. It was at a gala. Well, it turns out, I fell for this, by the way, last week. Hook, line, and sinker. Oh, what a funny guy. What a nice guy. He's helping this poor kid. It was not true. And it was a reminder to me, even though this is my business now, this is what I'm teaching teachers and teaching students, I still fall for misinformation. I fell for this because I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that Peyton Manning would do that for a young man. So in our Generation Skeptics resources page, we have a whole bunch of resources that will help teachers cover this information. Did you know that if you yell at rice, it'll grow mold? It's true. It's all over YouTube. Look it up. If you yell ugly things at rice, you make it grow mold.
I
And
thought
so
that was just if you left it in the rice cooker for too long.
well, see, they yell at one jar and they say lovely things to another jar of rice. They put them in the same place, and the one you yelled at grows mold. Check it out. Go to YouTube right now. There's a bunch of yelling at rice or the rice experiment or something like that. So what I do is I tell the kids this in this lesson, and then I ask them to set up an experiment to test if it is true. And not one time have I ever gotten students doing a double-blind protocol where the person yelling at the rice is not the person checking for mold, and the person checking for mold doesn't know which rice got yelled at and which rice got love. And the all-important double-blind protocol. So you're teaching students that, try to prove yourself wrong when you set up an experiment, not right. So I have a bunch of other labs and stuff there that I could go over with you. Check it out. This is a Photoshop of my dog as president. And I believe there was a question about my dog early on. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to release the answer now.
Oh, should we consult the poll results to see if people guessed correctly?
Let's do that.
Okay.
I love
Alright.
that dog. He would make never mind.
Ha,
I was
the
about to say
good-looking dog.
something.
The best
Yeah, he's a
dog.
good boy.
Everyone's saying it. Okay, so we'll go down to question number 4 in the poll, which was which fictional character did Bertha name her dog after? And the most commonly guessed answer at 32% was Buffy,
Ooh, the one I added and no one wanted there. Ooh.
followed closely, well, not that closely, but Worf and Ripley tied for 21% each, followed by Spock at 18%, and 7% of people selected Kylo Ren. So who got it?
If you said Kylo Ren, you won. My dog's name is Kylo. I'm a Star Wars fan.
Wow, it was the least popular answer. It's
Yeah.
almost like people here are not psychic.
Well, so the other thing is that is the only villain in that list.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, my son loves Star Wars too, and he kind of had something to do with it. And he was 14 at the time, so that might be part of it, or 15 at the time. So
I love it. Well, we're big fans of Star Wars here, so we approve of this choice. We approve of this message.
Yay. And I actually only have like a couple slides left if you want me to finish off here.
Yes, please do, and we'll look at the other poll question results after that.
Okay. I just could look at that beautiful doggy all day, but so some other stuff is we teach kids the tricks that scam artists will use to sell you pseudoscience, like money back guarantee and cures your energy fields or whatever, based on ancient plant wisdom. We make them create a pseudoscientific ad for hair growth or height or whatever. Here's an example from my class. And they have to include 5 of the 9 scams that are used. And what happens inevitably is they come back to class, they say, Ms. Vasquez, my mom took me to Whole Foods. And there's like an entire row of this stuff. And not that Whole Foods is bad, and they have terrific produce, and I shop there, but there is a lot of this kind of thing
So
going
for
on.
people who are only listening to this on audio, I have to describe one of these. It's hysterical. So height increasing pills for all ages, and there's 2 pictures. One is a before and after. The before is a short looking guy, and then the other one is this giant muscle bound guy with different skin tone and everything. But
Yeah, well, they were in the
supposed
group
to be the
together.
same person, of course.
Yeah, and then they say it's 100% natural, plant-based, gluten-free, 0 calories, no side effects, enhances cellular respiration, detoxifies bone marrow at the cellular level, expels microscopic carcinogens. So they have to use like sciencey words, you have the anecdotal doctor recommending it and all the certified plant-based stuff. And yeah, so it's sort of like a mental inoculation, right? Against pseudoscience. Next time these kids go to the store, hopefully they'll remember this. However, my son wanted creatinine powder, because he goes to the gym all the time now. He's in college. And I said, "Oh, Brendan, don't you know that stuff is nonsense? It's BS." And we happened to be at SciCon, and Nick Tiller was there, Dr. Nicholas Tiller, who is a science expert on sports medicine. And so I asked him, Nick, tell my son that is just baloney. And he says, Bertha, actually, creatine is one of the few things that is definitely scientifically based evidence, and it does work for what your son wants in the gym.
And it's good for brain health potentially, right?
Yeah, in older women, apparently, it's very good for us. And it was a perfect moment for my son to see his mother say, "Ah, gee, I was wrong. How exciting. This is true. I learned something today. It's okay to be wrong." So I turned it into a learning moment.
I love how excited you sounded when you said that. Oh, gee, how exciting.
Okay. Anyway, we also have bell ringers every day, based on Melanie Tresick King's 30 second to 3 minute videos for teachers who don't have a lot of time in their classroom. We also have a summer camp guide and an after school guide. We have speakers that could come and speak to classes, like the wonderful, amazing Kenny Biddle and the amazing, wonderful good friend of mine, Melanie Tresick King. So just to end this up, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, another wonderful scientist. And I'd like to circle back to losing my religion. I think the same habits of mine that led me away from religion, curiosity and humility, led me to science. It led me to see wonder in evolutionary biology, appreciate science, and question what I believe, be okay with being wrong. And just a quick shout out, I just published a book in February on teaching climate change with Corwin Press. This is a subject very, very close to my heart. Corwin Press allowed me to dedicate an entire chapter to how to approach misinformation surrounding this such an important topic, and how do you approach this in your classroom. And of course, I incorporated the whole humility, identifying your own biases, etc.
Well, and where do we find this book?
It's really easy. If you Google Vasquez Corwin, it pops up, or if you Google Corwin Press teaching climate change, it'll pop up. And by the way, Raven 25 gives you 25% off and free shipping in the US. So,
Ooh, there's a discount code and everything?
yeah.
Okay, I found the link. I'm dropping it in the chat.
It's for
Boom.
teachers. So if you have teachers in your lives that you love and who are perhaps worried about teaching this issue, because teachers are by nature very non-confrontational. The science is clear, but you're gonna get some pushback. And so this will help teachers cover the topic.
So for those not looking at this and just listening to the audio, you have a quote there by Michael E. Mann. Is that in the book? Did he write it?
Yeah, Michael,
Well,
I've met him a few times at SciCon, and he was kind enough to write this quote. He is Mr. Hockey Stick
yeah,
Graph.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. First identified what was happening to the climate in a graphical mode, then became vilified by everyone who didn't believe it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wait, I
Um,
don't know this backstory. Tell us about this. What happened?
so he created a graph. It's very famous. It's called the hockey stick graph with his team. It wasn't just him he's at the University of Pennsylvania now, and it shows you how the temperature increase, and then all of a sudden, when you hit the edge, when you hit the end of the hockey stick, he's showing you how it's shooting up, the carbon dioxide, not the temperature, excuse me. And he really got slammed for showing data, real evidence for carbon dioxide increase on Earth.
Oh wow. And it turned out in the end that his graph was later
Absolutely correct,
substantiated.
yes.
Yeah. Of course it did.
And
Wow.
interestingly enough, we post about evolution on social media all the time, and I don't get anything nasty from our young Earth creationist friends. I promoted this book on the Generation Skeptics site, and I had over 200 comments, and some of them were pretty nasty. So it's a topic that teachers are most definitely scared to talk about because they don't want to
Yeah.
deal with that kind of thing.
Well, and that's a really good point that you make too. Like we in the skeptical community need to go back to kind of the point you were making about being curious and being humble, and not being ugly to people all the time. Let's add
Yeah.
that to the list. Can we add like don't be a jerk to be curious and be humble?
Yeah.
Because just
Yeah.
because we've found one belief that we used to hold that we no longer believe is accurate, and we congratulate ourselves on figuring that out, doesn't mean that now we hold the answers to all of life's questions and
Right.
know everything that there is to know. Let's keep that humility. Oops, I accidentally muted you, Bertha, when I was clicking on something. That was not intentional.
I'm not a fan of making fun of people like young Earth creationists because I know what Melanie came on your show, or I mentioned Melanie Teresa King a few times, and she gave you guys an evolution poll, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of people who accept evolution don't really understand evolution. You're accepting evolution because it's part of your quote unquote tribe, be it the lefty tribe or the I love science tribe. I believe in science. You just accept evolution because you know it's part of your tribe, but you don't really know it. And that's really what the young Earth creationists are doing, right? Their mothers and their fathers and their church leaders are telling them this is the way it is. And so for a long time, unless you start questioning it, you believe it. So let's offer them some kindness and understanding.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of times I know people coming out of religion kind of go through that angry atheist phase, and understandable. I've definitely been there too. But you make a good point. We were there ourselves at one point in time, and we're not any smarter now than we were when we were believing that. So maybe let's hold some space for other people to be on their own journey too. That's a great point. Well, we have questions, but also we have poll results that we should share. What do you say we look at the answers to the other poll questions, and then move on to some audience questions. Okay. I will share the results. So the other questions that we asked at the beginning of the show started with, at what age did you first question the faith you were raised in? And I made the mistake of not adding an option for I did not do that. So some people may have fallen into that group, but of the ones that picked an age range, we did actually have 3 people select under 5, so I'm glad we
Whoa.
included that one.
I would
I
love
want
to know what they thought about before the age of 5.
I would too. If that was you and you want to share, tell us in the chat, like, what were you questioning? I mean, maybe, I mean, it must be, I don't know. I'm interested. I want to hear. About the same number of people selected age range of 5 to 10. And then we have a lot more start showing up. 26% of respondents, that was 11 people, selected 11 to 17. 14 people selected 18 to 25. That was 33%. And then the numbers started to drop off. Only 4 people, or 9%, selected 26 to 30. And then 19%, which was 8 people, selected over 30. So we kind of have this this spike in the teenage years and early 20s.
I think
Why
that
do you
makes sense, don't you?
I do too. I think that's when we're starting to develop those critical thinking skills, right? Not that that's the only reason that someone might question their faith, but maybe we're starting to have critical thinking. Maybe we're also starting to want to become sort of our own differentiated person, separate from what our families are doing.
Yeah.
Do you think those are some of the reasons, or what do you think? Having worked with kids in some of these age ranges,
For
what
sure,
do you
for
see?
sure. That's when their brains, their intellects are blooming, and they're also hearing different points of view, possibly in school or from neighbors or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah,
So,
it's also a difficult question to parse out specifically because, we just asked that as a whole cloth. Did you start first question of faith? I don't know how I am the moderators here can't answer these questions. I'm not quite sure what I would have said because I don't think I ever believed in transubstantiation, for example. Right. So would that be question? Would that be if I did that at 5 to 10, would I say that? Although I still believed in the predominant rest of it. So I don't know if I would have what I would have said there if I was able to answer this question
well, it
because
said, did you first question? So I think that would count.
yeah, then
Yeah.
it would have been pretty young. I mean, I didn't think they were being serious about that. How could anybody believe that? That's not true.
It's kind of
Yeah,
gross.
I agree. There were some things that I don't think I ever believed them. Like, we went along with it because you had to, but it never actually made sense to me as far back as I can remember. We didn't have transubstantiation, but we had all of the other, literal stuff that
Mhm.
is said to have occurred in the Bible, and it was hard to imagine some of that happening even as a young child.
So it's only the Catholics that do the transubstantiation?
Maybe Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox also, I think.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
people may not know what that word is, in fact, if they weren't
Yeah.
raised in it. So that means that during the communion, there's an actual miracle that happens every time a priest does a communion, that the wafer, which is bread, literally in some fashion, of course they can't explain what fashion because it still looks like bread, is the body of Christ, and the wine becomes the blood of Christ. Not metaphorically, there's some essence of it which actually is that thing. That's what they claim.
Why select that of all the stories in the Bible, and we're gonna say that all of these others are just explanatory. They're just helping us understand. They're exaggerated. This is epic history. They're not literal. Why pick that one to
Don't
be
know.
literal? That
Good
one's
question.
gross.
And I didn't think they considered it literal till I joined the atheist community and was told that that was a thing.
Yeah, you see,
What
yeah.
did you,
So
Rob?
I did I did a series of logical fallacies, and one of them I did was No True Scotsman, and each one had an example on the paper, and it was two Catholics talking to each other. It says, so, oh, no Catholic believes in that's real. Right, then they're not a real Catholic. They're not a true Catholic. I had such pushback when I posted that and half of the people said, that's stupid. Nobody actually believes that. To other people saying, well, that's true. That's a important part of Catholic doctrine. And if you don't believe that, you're not a true Catholic. It was like split 50-50.
Yep. I have a good friend who is Catholic, and she has, kind of confided in me, I'm not going to say her name, that she isn't really convinced that transubstantiation is actually happening. And it's like a little bit of a crisis. She's like, now I know some people will say that, I don't really have faith, but I am really still Catholic, but I just don't think that's real. And I'm like, it's
All you
okay,
gotta
I
do
won't
is
out you.
bring in a forensic scientist or a food scientist and test the bread and see if it's made of bread or human
So,
flesh.
so here's the thing, Bertha. There are claims all over the internet that go back into antiquity, that there are churches through Europe which have samples where they've tested the host and they could tell it's O positive blood, or they've tested it and it's muscle fiber. And we've actually had clients call in about this, and they're obsessed with that because it's on the internet. It's got to be true, and that proves Catholicism. It's like, wow. There's no other explanation for somebody saying that, is there? But yeah.
That means it happened once or twice in the Middle Ages, but it doesn't happen in my church over there. I drove right by my elementary school on my way to my mom's. So
Possibly. So yeah, and another personal example, we have a friend, I got into an argument about it. She considers herself a really good Catholic, and we got into a religious argument at one point. So I picked that as the most ridiculous thing that Catholics believe. And she said, nobody believes that. I said, go talk to your priest. That's crazy. He wouldn't believe that. It's like,
He might. Okay, let's go to the next poll question because we got to get to some audience questions here. We're having a lot of fun with these. So the next question that we asked was, if you have left a faith, what filled that void for you? And 31, this was one where you could select more than one answer, so these may add up to more than 100%. But 31% of people selected music or art, 21% said sports or hobbies, 23% said work, 26% said science. Hey, look at that. 15% said friends or family, 3% said another faith, 15% said there was no void, 8% said they have not left any faith, and 33% said something else. And I'm seeing some options in the chat, including heavy metal music and The Sims. I love that. So, any thoughts on that? You've kind of talked a little bit about science as filling that void, but we did have a question in the chat that I'm gonna shoehorn in here, which was, must we fill the void? Someone mentioned, I feel a void and have no desire to need to fill it or replace it. What are your thoughts on that, Bertha?
yeah, because if it's like a void right here in your chest, if you run really fast, it might make a really cool whistling sound as the wind goes through your body. No, I'm kidding.
Ah,
Yeah. For a long time, that's a great answer because for a long time, I actually tried Buddhism. I tried world pantheism, nature is God. I tried different things, and one day I just said, nah. It's like Letting Go of God by Julia Sweeney, which is a wonderful thing that she does.
yes.
I just woke up, I said, no, I feel fine. I feel perfectly fine just like this. So that's a great answer.
I love it. Okay. Well, and then our last question was, what does critical thinking mean to you? And 22% of people selected it's the ability to look at evidence and draw a conclusion. 8% of people selected identifying your own biases and limitations. 3% of people selected being contrarian. And I don't know if they were being contrarian by selecting that answer,
Yeah.
and if that like somehow makes it meta in some way. But and then anyway, 68% of people said A and B, which were the first two options. I don't know why I felt the need to explain that last bit. I'm going to stop talking. Tell us your thoughts, Bertha.
Yeah, I'm great. I think it's great that people are realizing that evaluating the receiver is as important as evaluating the claim and the source. And that we must always be constantly vigilant because I know that there's no way that 100% of what I believe is true. And I'm totally cool with that, by the way.
Sometimes I think about it. I sit there and I think if logically speaking, it must be that I am believing some things that are not true, but like, do you worry about which ones they are?
I worry if it's a medically related one,
Yeah.
or if my belief might be harming others.
Ooh, that's a
That
good point.
worries me. But the fact that Peyton Manning didn't sit down with that little boy, or nah, it's okay to be wrong.
Okay, good. You're making me feel better. Okay, let's take a couple of audience questions while we still have some time left. Rob, would you like to select one that we have collected from the chat?
Yeah, let's take the next one on the list. Thank you for joining us today on RfRx, as said this person participating today. What are your thoughts on the state of science literacy and on STEM education today? And it goes on. What can we as citizen scientists do to better protect science from those who wish to cut programs or stifle research? Should we consider majoring in STEM ourselves? And if so, what should we be aware of? Multi-part question there.
Great question.
I'm going to put
I
that,
do
I'm
get
going to
this
put that in the
question
chat.
because
I'm going to put it all in the chat in case you don't remember it, because I don't remember it after reading it.
put my glasses back on. One thing is, each state has a Department of Education, and there's a review of standards that takes place periodically every few years. And you can there's a window period for public opinion. So for example, Arizona and Iowa, when they last changed their standards, they really improved their evolution standards. They added the word evolution, natural selection, adaptation, the biological unity of evolution. And the people in the Department of Education in those states took those words right back out again. And same thing happened with climate change in those states. Well, there was an uproar. There was an uproar from not just educators, but non-educators who said, wait a second, the standards were fine the way they were written. Why are you guys messing with this? And Arizona accepted the original standards without the modification completely. Iowa accepted the evolution ones, unfortunately tinkered a little bit with the climate change stuff. So your voice can be heard and can affect what students are taught. And standards are really, really important, because if a teacher kind of scared to teach evolution, if a parent says, well, hey, why are you teaching this? Why aren't you teaching creationism? The teacher could back away from the argument by saying, I am teaching the state's standards. It is not up to me. Another good thing is to write to newspapers, write to editors, call the legislators, reach out. If you have science background, reach out to teachers and offer to come to their classrooms, offer to help out. Teachers love guest speakers. Kids, my God, kids love guest speakers. So there's that too.
Can I ask a follow-up on the climate change? So this is always, but I can understand the pushback from the religious community and the people they elect to office on evolution, because that directly counters the Christian and Jewish and I guess Islamic statement of God creating us special. But what the hell is it with climate change? Why? That's not in the Bible. Why?
Profit, oil industry influence. I highly recommend a book called Miseducation by Katie Worth. It's not a large book, very short. And she talks about the influence of the oil industry on the textbook industry. And a lot of textbooks are written in Texas, by the way. So they can control what is in the textbooks. Thankfully, when you have states that have strong standards, the textbooks have to have what those states want, or they're not going to sell textbooks in that state. But it's absolutely the influence of the oil industry. There's also something, solution aversion. I don't really want to recycle. I don't really want to buy a gas efficient car. I don't want to have to deal with putting solar panels on my roof. So you just avoid the confronting the problem. That's part of it too. By the
Okay.
way, I just want to say, I published a study in 2017, a state-by-state comparison of evolution standards, middle school evolution standards. Nobody had done that. And I had like 15 states that got an F on middle school evolution standards. Last week, I did it again in preparation for the Scopes trial presentation, end of July. Do you want to know what's happened to evolution standard middle? Oh, hi, kitty cat. Middle school evolution standards in the United States from 2017 to 2025?
I
I
don't want it to
kind
be
of
true, but I
I
have to guess
don't
at that
want
word.
to, but please tell us.
Really good news. Actually, I think I even have it open. No, I closed it. Of those 15 states, most of them have moved from F to A. Many
Wow.
states, 3 states moved from D to A. We have only one state that is still F, and that
W-
is Texas.
Oh, my good old home state.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the standards have really, really, really improved. And you're going to see a difference. Oh, evolution acceptance is up to 80% now, by the way. The last Pew Research poll was up to 80%. Remember, it was hovering around 50, 51, 49% for a very long time. So actually, good news.
Wow,
Not everything is
I am
going to hell in a
shocked.
handbasket.
I am shocked and
Wow.
thrilled.
Isn't that
I
great?
am too. Wow, I'm glad you shared that with us. I
And
was
I see
all ready to
people,
think it was the opposite.
okay, there's people here saying that they're worried about Oklahoma. I'm gonna find Oklahoma for you.
Yeah, so Oklahoma recently had the superintendent of schools or some position like that send out a letter to people that they're going to teach history based on the Bible now.
Oh yeah, I do remember
I
that.
actually learned about that from a caller who was from Oklahoma to the helpline. I
Yeah,
wanted to know what they can do about it. Yeah.
they are requiring, I think, Bibles in the schools. I'm seeing someone shaking their head. I'm not sure if that's disagreeing or no. Yeah, that's my understanding, and it's a very particular Bible promoted by a certain political figure that they're requiring the schools
Oh
to get,
no.
apparently. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it has to be a Bible that's also printed with the U.S. Constitution and other documents from the founding of the country. Oh, where is there a Bible that's like that? Yeah.
I can think of just one.
I think teachers in history classes are suffering more right now than teachers in science classes. There's that pushback with the vaccines, but I'm more fearful for history teachers. I'm more fearful for language arts teachers that are getting their books banned
Hmm.
than the science teachers.
Yeah. Well, okay. Speaking of which, we have a somewhat related question here. Someone is wondering if ties or science saves or generation skeptics are available at all outside of the United States.
Yes, well, everything's free online. And so I've had many people in South America reach out to me that they're using it because the ties webpage has an entire middle school evolution unit and high school evolution unit in Spanish. I did a presentation for Brazil on generation skeptics. So, and we're going to be presenting ties in British Columbia next October, hopefully. So yeah, people are using it outside of the country. I'm just trying to stick to what I know. I understand education in this country, so I'm scared to expand too far into a country where I don't really understand the ins and outs.
Mhm.
But
That
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
mean, it's on the site. You could download whatever you want and use it.
We
Awesome.
had Natalia Pasternak on about a month ago and
Oh
talked
gosh,
about
talk about passion.
oh yeah, it was amazing. But what's going on in Brazil is also scary.
Did she talk about that type of therapy?
Yep, she
Oh,
did.
Yes. The
I was the one that had
family
to summarize for the Skeptical Inquiry. I summarized her.
Ah, family, is that family oh,
constellations, something
constellation.
Oh,
family constellations, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, I've
where if you're a victim, if you're a woman, you got to go in front of people role playing, and they're just berating you for doing what you. That's unbelievable.
I have told so many people about that, and while they haven't had that exact experience with that framework, it really resonates with people as far as just kind of the way that they felt they were treated when they sought help when they were in
Mm,
an abusive
mm.
situation or had experienced something traumatic. So that was real weird.
Yeah, that's like gaslighting to a whole new level.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a wild episode. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. Rob, you get to pick.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Very political one. With increasing corruption, authoritarianism, and shift to theocratic governing, the sharing the information we know, theories we're engaging with in science now, and teaching critical thinking skills may become verboten. How are teachers preparing for this possibility?
Well, so far we can lean back on the standards. Very important. I think a lot of times too, when the door closes, you teach what you teach. Like climate change isn't in the Florida standards, but I taught about climate change.
Did you
Um,
have any fear of the student going home and, parents saying, "Hey, what did you
no,
learn in
because I
school
tied
today?"
it to standards. That's the big thing is you want to tie everything you do back to the state standards so that you can say, what? It's in the standards. What? I didn't do anything. So far, again, as a science teacher, I don't think is as bad as what the English teachers and certainly the social studies teachers are dealing with right now. And I don't want to speak about social studies standards because it's not my area of expertise, but I think it's going to happen in some areas and not the other. And that really scares me because kids are going to be getting a way better education in some states than others. It's going to put some kids really behind. When it comes to
Yeah,
evolution education, for example, you get to
Mhm.
medical school or you get to the agriculture school and you don't know why plants develop resistance or pests develop resistance because you were never taught evolution, antibiotics, etc. So
Yeah, yeah. So there's a
it's
connected question, which is maybe just what you're talking about. Is there more pushback in red states than blue states for implementing your programs across the country?
no, I haven't felt, believe it or not, too much pushback. I got heckled in Ohio. That sounds like a rock band. Heckled in Ohio. I got heckled in Ohio. Um, no, we have not felt. Uh, it's been extremely well received everywhere and every time, pretty much, because it's just good teacher resources. It's not. We don't get into the politics at all. I don't address creationism unless I'm asked to address it because I figure like, man, this evolution stuff, it is really cool in a way. Like my product is way better than your product. I think so. All you have to do is show enthusiasm for evolutionary biology and you'll be fine. No, I want to say, yeah, it's terrible and teachers are suffering, but no, teachers are teaching and doing what they could do to the best of their abilities.
Well, there is some good news. That's great.
Yeah. I will say I have a lot of hope for the future because of young people that are in school and learning now, and they seem like, to your point, to be receptive to learning about really cool things, and coming with, I dare I say it, a little bit of an open mind. I love teaching anthropology because, students come in and have those aha moments where they're like, "What? This is so cool! I had no idea." And that far outweighs the number of people that are coming and going, "Woke, this is the woke ideology." That's like a minority. Most people are like, "Wow, mind blown. What do you mean race isn't biologically real?" And it's exciting to teach when people are excited to learn. So you're giving us hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, kids, my fear is AI, like Chat GPT is answering their questions for 'em. My fear is they're so involved in their cell phones that they're not paying attention to the teacher. Those things concern me way more than creationism pushing back on evolution in the classroom.
Mhm. That's fair. All right. Well, uh, On that note, let's wrap up. I am going to drop your links into the chat again. Is there anything, Bertha, that you want to leave us with before we wrap up and go to the hangout? Any final thoughts or advice?
My final thought would be keep your eye out for the Science Saves People's Choice contest next week. We'll be putting up 6 amazing videos. They're all worthy of winning. And we as the public can choose which of those students makes $1,000. The other 5 will make $250. So check back to the Science Saves page after next Wednesday when we open the public contest to see who wins that award.
Absolutely will do. Thank you for reminding us. And thank you for sharing with us all of your insights and all of this information and these incredible resources that I am about to go and watch all of. These online webinars and things are looking very interesting to me. This is going to take up a large amount of my time, and I am not sorry about it. I love this.
Well, thank you. This was fun. I feel like I'm with my people. I should have just had like a beer while I was sitting here and this.
It's totally
It's not
allowed,
too,
and
not too late. Not too late.
it's
Yeah, I think
not
my
too
mom has
late.
some white wine in the fridge. I might run and get some while we start this Q&A session.
Yeah.
I will join you with some as we go to the hangout. So that's a deal.
Oh,
Okay.
look, Nikki's
Yes.
you got started already, girl.
All right.
Wait a
Look at
second.
us. All right.
Now I
See, you always
feel
have a good
left
time
out.
here. Okay, well, let's get to it then. Don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. Next week we do have Nathan Lentz talking
Yes,
about
guys, he's gonna be awesome.
he is so awesome. And he has a new book out, which is called The Sexual Evolution. And I just bought it on Audible just while we were having this talk because I wanted to make sure and listen to it before next week. And that is what he'll be talking about. The topic of the talk is sex and gender diversity in the animal world. So cannot wait. Other speakers coming up include Graham Martin, the cross examiner, Dr. Daryl Ray, Stephanie M., Dan Sokoloff. I hope I said that right. Yes, excellent. Adrian Hill and myself. So not that y'all don't see enough of me as is. So get ready for more of that. And also don't forget to follow us on social media. It helps other people find us and access our services. If you are comfortable sharing that on your socials or liking or following such things, please do. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube. So follow us on there. And Rob, how else can people get involved?
They can consider volunteering for this organization. We've learned that healing can come from helping other people. So the volunteers here find meaning and purpose by volunteering with Recovering from Religion. All the services the organization provides are provided by volunteers, and we're always in need of more. There are all sorts of jobs besides working the helplines, which is a thing that mostly gets promoted on, call-in shows, and we're really happy they do that. But we have so many more jobs for people who want to help us out. If you don't want to, answer phones or chats, we need people to find and vet and post good resources on our resource database for our clients to use and for the agents to give them. We need people to host the support groups we talked about before. We need people to moderate the online community that we talked about. And we even need people who are IT professionals to improve our software, because that's how we interface with each other in the outside world. And we do all of that in-house. To apply, volunteer, fill out the form on our main page. Go to recoveringfromreligion.org, and there's a volunteer tab right at the top. And it'll tell you a little bit about what that involves and what you'd like to do for us. Fill out the form and we'll get back to you. And lastly, I want to mention there is a very short 3-minute video on our main page, which you can share with anyone you know is in need. And it's called RfR, What We Do. And it goes through all of the services that it took us almost 15 minutes to tell you about at the beginning of this in 3 minutes.
All right. And with that, for less than 3 minutes, we're going to hear from Dr. Daryl Ray, our founder and president. See what I did there? actually, he can talk as long as he wants. As soon as I give him the ability to unmute himself, which he was patiently waiting for me to do. There we
Yeah,
go.
I thought I'd already unmuted myself, but you were holding me hostage and
I
and
was.
limiting my ability to speak here.
I got a
Right, anyway.
timer over here too. Watch
Oh,
out.
please don't do that to me. That'll kill me. Bertha, thank you so much for coming tonight. This was fun, interesting, and I'm telling you, I know teachers are on the front line of this entire culture stuff, and I'm glad to have people like you helping teachers know how to handle some of this really difficult stuff that's coming. I remember being in 8th grade and asking a question of my 8th grade science teacher. And I loved the guy. He was really a good teacher. But I came up to him after class and I asked him a question about evolution. And he turned red as a beet and he said, "You'll have to talk to your parents about that."
Oh, wow.
And I knew damn good and well he knew the answer to my question, but he was scared. Now, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, so that may explain a little bit of it. But so and I know that was light compared to what some teachers are experiencing now. I do have to say that you and I have a parallel. We're twins separated at birth, maybe. My hamster dying was a critical moment in my theological change. When my hamster died, I asked my mom, "Is my hamster going to heaven?" And she says, "No, only humans go to heaven." And right then I knew she was lying. That couldn't be. My hamster was such a nice hamster. So that began my questioning, probably at the ripe old age of 8 or 9. But it took me a long time after that to get out. And by the way, I just met Julia Sweeney a couple of months ago, and I got to teach her a little bit about recovery from religion when she and I were attending a small meeting.
Did you ask her to do one of these talks? I've tried to reach out. She never replies.
Yeah, I have no contact information to her, but I'd sure like, that'd be pretty cool to get her on here, wouldn't it? Somebody raised the question, do people really believe in that cannibalism, Catholic cannibalism? What'd you call it? Transubstantiation, right, Rob?
Yep, that's it.
Just a couple weeks ago, a guy I know, friend of mine, Michael, went to Topeka and stomped on a cracker, and he got sued by the Catholic Church. So yeah, they really believe that stuff. So that's just a lesson to you. Don't be stomping on crackers on the state capitol. It wasn't even the thing they used. It was something he had gotten off of Amazon or something. I know. He talked to me about it. Well, I will say your proposal, Bertha, to question your own beliefs, that is so important, but it's also so hard.
Really hard.
And I think I have a hard time with it. But what I find is that the more your beliefs get away from reality, the more trouble you start having. So if you're having trouble in life, it usually, I'm a psychologist, by the way, Bertha. So if you're having trouble in life, it's probably because you've got a belief structure that doesn't mirror reality. So you're basically denying reality on a regular basis, and it's going to come back to bite you. What do you think of that?
Never thought about that.
So that's a good way to question your beliefs, because beliefs lead you to inappropriate action within the environment in which you're living. Now, I don't think that's hard and fast, but I think it's a reasonable way to think about it. So anyway, enough of mine. I'm here to praise you, and I appreciate what you came to do, not to put my spin on everything.
But I'm sorry,
yeah.
I have a question for you, Daryl.
Yeah.
They always tie happiness. One of the components of happiness is to have a faith or a belief system in something. But that would go against what you're saying, right? Because to me, religion is delusional. It's so.
Well, there isn't the evidence that I don't know what evidence you're citing, but there's been quite a bit, and it clearly does not say exactly what you said. What it says is your
meaning, right?
If you have a strong worldview, you tend to be happier. You could be an atheist with a strong worldview, or you can be a Christian with a strong worldview.
I see.
And it goes in a reverse. People in the middle are the least happy, so to speak. But like I said, I don't think what I just said is 100% true, because if you're living inside of a Catholic church and your beliefs comport with what everybody else is being taught, you're going to get along pretty well until you get measles because you went along with their anti-vax stuff. So sooner or later, reality does hit you.
I see.
And that reality that I don't believe in measles vaccines, or I don't believe in, in washing my hands or whatever, that's what I mean. Real reality, biological reality, not the reality that lives within your belief bubble, if that makes a little difference.
Yeah, I get it. And the danger is put those people in power. If you don't want to get vaccinated for measles, that's terrible. I'm sorry, but to put that person in charge of the Department of Health is
Yep,
a real
absolutely.
travesty.
But you see this all the time with people, quote unquote, coming to Jesus when their own kid gets polio, their own kid gets measles. When their father dies because they couldn't get science-based health care. So then they say, oh, now I understand. And that's why you get all these celebrities getting out there and really pushing for fundraisers for cancer, because my mother died of cancer, or colorectal cancer, or prostate cancer, but they weren't doing that beforehand. It's like the Nancy Reagan effect. She got all into Parkinson's, I believe it was after Ronald Reagan got Parkinson's. So anyway, I'm going to move on here. Let me just say that you guys, if you were with us all this weekend, the fundraiser was fucking awesome. We couldn't believe it. We were shocked at how well we did. And it's over 96,000. Last I checked, it was like $96,274 or something. And it's going to stay open for a couple more weeks. So if you want to donate to our big fundraiser, please do. And we are so thankful to the hundreds and hundreds of people that donated to RFR. And we had 2 or 3 large donors that put in money and said, we'd like you to use us to match. And we were able to use almost all of the matching funds. We fell just a little bit short of using all the matching funds, but it still was a hell of a lot of money that came in for us. So thank you so much, and tell people they can still donate if you know somebody that missed it or would like to do that. And finally, I read Nathan Lintz's book, Bertha, and I loved it. In fact, I read an early version of it. That's an excellent book.
Yeah, I haven't read
we're just
that
thrilled
one.
to have him.
I read Human Errors and Animal and Others.
Yeah, no, this latest one's really worth it. I'm very excited that he's going to be talking next week. So thanks for coming and talking to us.